Hello, I am Arjun Majumdar. I am the founder and CEO of Indiahikes. Now, Indiahikes is known to be the largest trekking organization in our country. But what it is more known for are the changes that we have brought about in the trekking world. Most of the treks which people now trek on have been documented by Indiahikes. It's been put on the map of our country by Indiahikes. Treks in Uttarakhand, in Himachal, in Kashmir. Not only that, most safety systems or the environmental management systems that you see in treks today have been brought out by Indiahikes. It is in this context that I want to share some of the lessons that I've learned over the years as we have been growing Indiahikes. We have gone through lots and ups and downs. But some of these lessons have stayed with us for years. And perhaps a few of them you may even find unusual, but I just wanted to share them with you. But I'll have to give a little backdrop first. When I was young, in my 20s, when I was trekking in these mountains, I would trek along with my friends. We would live in these tents, and very often we would talk about trekking amongst each other. And the talks would very often move around to the fact that why was it so difficult for us to trek in our country? Why was it that so few Indians trekked? And these thoughts would stay with me long after these treks would get over. Personally, I was benefiting a lot from trekking, as I did one trek after another. But on the other hand, even for someone like me, it was becoming increasingly difficult to mount an expedition because trekking information was scarce, almost non-existent. And at a point came when I said, no, this cannot go on, because trekking in our country, like how I was benefiting from it, nobody could benefit from trekking if the state of information stayed the way it was. And I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to set up a database of trekking information where anyone could dip into that database and find that information, download it, and do the trek on their own. But setting up of such a database of information is not easy. See, India is a very vast and a very big country, and the number of treks that you can do, leave aside the Himalayas, even all across the country, is innumerable. So these information cannot be put together by volunteers wanting to say, look, I want to add to this information. This information has to be curated. And any curation requires an organization. While an organization can be created, you cannot ask people to pay money for this information. While I'm trying to solve the problems of the biggest problem in trekking, as I saw it, the problem of information, by curating it, I didn't think anybody would be willing enough to pay money to get this information, and I also didn't feel it was right. We are trekkers, and in trekkers we generally share such information. You don't buy or sell information like this. So I was wondering, if an organization has to be set up and it has to earn money, what can we do? And the next thought which struck me was that we could organize treks. People could come along on these treks with us, and they could pay us for doing this trek. Because even in the way the treks were conducted in our country at that time, I was not at all happy. It was not the way I visualized trekking had to be. And that was another problem that had to be solved. What I'm trying to tell you is this, that in any business school or business model that you see, people always advise you that if you have a big tangible problem, then there is a business behind it, there's a market behind it. And what I was faced with is the biggest tangible problem in trekking was the lack of information, but there was no money behind it. Nobody would be willing to pay for that. But the lesson that I learned was this, that there are always subsidiary problems around big problems. And these subsidiary problems can be monetized, like the problem that I was trying to solve. There were two problems that I was trying to solve. One was that trekking had to grow in our country, and two is that how trekking was conducted in our country. And the second problem was a smaller problem and part of the bigger problem, but that could be monetized. And this is the lesson that I learned. And this knowledge that I learned very early on stayed with Indiahikes for a very long time. we started looking at our organization in a way that we were here to solve the problems of the trekking world. We picked one problem after another. And as we kept doing that, we didn't think of what money we would get out of it or what returns we would get out of it. We just picked problems of safety, problems of sustainability, problems of discovering new trails, problems of how treks had to be conducted. None of these could be monetized. But what we realized is that problems around this, the smaller problems around these, had potentials of monetization. There's another lesson which has stayed with me and with Indiahikes for some time, something that we truly believe in and we follow it very religiously. And this is about how we select people who want to work with us. In most organizations and companies that you see anywhere across the world, when someone is selecting a candidate, the focus is always on the work experience, the educational background, and sometimes on any special skills or talents which they may have. What we have seen is these don't matter so much. What matters is if the candidate comes with a lot of humility. Now this may surprise a lot of people that we are talking about humility when you are talking about thousands of people or hundreds of people who may be applying and who have to be selected. But what we have seen is this is the biggest criteria that we need to look into when we are selecting anyone, and I need to explain this to you. See, as an organization, you are interested in the growth of the organization. You want the organization to do well. To do well, you need team members who can work along with you. You want team members who can work effortlessly with others. You want team members who learn quickly and who take that learning and apply it in their work. You want team members who can take feedback very well. You want team members who are able to be cooperative with every other team member, not only in their own particular teams but even otherwise. And what we have seen is all of these qualities that I am talking about are there in a humble person. And that's why for us humility matters so much. What we have seen is that when we see these qualities in a person, immediately the quality of work has changed quite a bit. So much so that in a team where we have a team full of humble people, the amount of work and the quality of work is so much better that you cannot even compare it with a team where it's filled with humble people, but there's one person who's not so humble. The difference in quality is not little, but this much. And when we see it over and over again, year after year, we are absolutely convinced that when we select a candidate, we must not select a candidate based on what background they come or what qualification they come. We must select them based on how humble they are. And I want to tell you something. People think humble means are people those who are soft-spoken or with soft demeanor. No. What we have seen is humble people are confident. They can articulate their thoughts, but they do it very respectfully. They don't let their egos override anything around them. And if you tell them something as a feedback, they take it very gracefully. So much so in our organization, what we have done is we have changed our entire selection process focusing on humility. We have developed tests, questionnaires, even our interview process focuses on humility. When we are very serious about a candidate, it happens, after some time you get serious about a candidate and you want them to join us. What we do is we ask them to come and spend an entire day with us. You may not have heard this anywhere else, but we ask them to come and spend the entire day with us. We ask them to work alongside with us. We give them some interesting projects to work on. Not only that, we share a lunch with them and we are observing them closely to see if they are humble. And if they are, we select them immediately. It has paid us great dividends because when we have seen that people who are humble, they do great work. And not only they do great work, the quality and the quantity of work done is also a lot more. On these lines, there's another lesson that we have learned over the years. One of the big lessons that we have learned from the very early days of Indiahikes is not to measure our success by profit or loss, but to measure it by how deeply we have been able to ingrain the value systems of the organization in those who are working along with us. And we have seen very, very big differences and startling differences when we do that. And I have to give you a little bit of backstory for this. When anybody who is working in the organization imbibes the values of the organization, two things happen. One is they develop a lot of ownership about the work. There's a lot of love and pride about the organization. They not only respect the values of the organization, they imbibe it and they take it down to their own personal lives. When such things happen, one of the greatest benefits is they do not require supervision. At Indiahikes, you will notice there are very few managers. We do not have, because most of those who work, and if they have imbibed the values of the organization, they don't need supervision. Because there's a great sense of ownership about the work. And great sense of ownership about the work has one added benefit: the quality of the work is very high. Not only the quality, the intelligence and the creativity that you put in the work is so much more that you cannot measure it. Even on the field when we go, when we see a trek leader who has imbibed the values of our organization, and when they take trekkers on a trek, the trekkers come back with a very different experience. They don't come back thinking they have had a great trek. They come back even as those who have imbibed some of the values of the organization, because a trek leader has been able to radiate that. When such an event happens, we have seen the trekkers talk about the organization as if it is one of their own. They talk about Indiahikes as if they own Indiahikes. When they talk about it to their friends and relatives or whoever is around them, they talk in words and sentences and emotions that even we cannot talk. Very frankly, we would get very embarrassed to talk in the language they do. So they pass on our values to even those around them, and when their friends or relatives come and join us for the trek, they come back expecting these values and already imbibed in them. They almost talk to us as if they are one of us. I am not surprised that in many of our cases our treks get booked out 2 or 3 months in advance. But the biggest example of this I saw was when COVID struck us last year. When COVID struck us last year, our summer bookings for our treks were almost done. I think it was in the month of March that we are talking about. And here, the summer bookings were already done, and we had to stop our treks abruptly. Not only did our work stop, we were now faced with giving refunds to all of these trekkers, and these trekkers were in thousands. And trekkers don't pay us small money to do the trek. Each of our treks cost almost 10,000 rupees. And we were faced to give these refunds. But here's where the startling thing happened. We did something which was very unthinkable. We requested that our trekkers, if they would not ask for a refund, if they would not press for a refund, if they could keep the money with us, it would help us tidy over this crisis. Mind you, not help them, but it would help us tidy over this crisis. And would they be willing to do that? You won't believe that more than 80% of the trekkers kept the money with us. And we were faced with very little returns. This helped us to tidy over the entire COVID crisis. Not only that, even our team members who were working along with us, they took home very minimal salaries. And it was all voluntary. We never asked them what you take back home. They themselves said, let me take only this much. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 people, I'm talking about the entire organization. When an organization believes in the values of the organization, you get such startling results. These cannot be measured. And they have cascading benefits in the way people work, in the way they think, in the amount of creativity, the sense of ownership. And you will see it even in our trekkers, in the way they come along and they want to be associated with us. They want to even work with us. It has long and far-reaching cascading effect. That's why at Indiahikes we don't measure our success with the profits or loss. In fact, we never discuss money at Indiahikes. It's never discussed, never brought about. We never talk about this is what we are doing or that is what we are doing. But we always talk about the value systems of our organization and how deeply we have been able to ingrain it, because we have seen it has given us great benefits. Today, when I have talked to you all about a couple of these things, about how we look at problems, how humility can be used as a selection tool, how we can measure the success of the organization not by profits but by how deeply we have ingrained the values of the organization, I hope I have left you with some food for thought. Because what we have observed over the years is over many years, over more than a decade, and it has given us great benefits. And I am hoping that if I have left you with some food for thought, and if you ponder over these lessons that I have shared with you, it may help you to think differently about your organization. Thank you very much.